please.
So today I'm going to be talking about what I'm calling the other 99%. You're going to be asking me what's the 1%, but we'll get to that in a second. And before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit of a story. But when I was doing this talk and preparing for it, I was thinking, do I focus on use cases? Do I show you what's possible? Or do I help you go on the journey? And what I realized actually is that everyone's path is completely different. Everyone's in completely different organizations. Everyone's at different scales of maturity when it comes to data. And it's important that I equip you with some mental models, a way of looking at this. So I won't give you the full answer, but hopefully I help you sort of along the way. And the story I'm going to tell you about is a young gentleman by the name of Otto. A few of you in this crowd may have seen me talk about this before, so apologies if you've seen this. And what this young gentleman is doing is using something on a fridge with a bunch of cards. And what he's trying to do is put some process around his bedtime routine because, 3.5-year-olds are notorious for struggling to go into bed, brushing teeth, getting dressed, bedtime story, things like that. And if you haven't noticed, this young gentleman is one of my sons out of two called Otto. And that contraption over there is my way of somehow trying to put some order into the madness. And Otto likes to tell me stories. He calls them mythical creatures. He talks about robots, unicorns. Let's do some stories. In a way, like this whole world of AI that we're in is somewhat in this sort of mystical, super AGI was the other one with like the view of this like single massive entity. And like, we feel like we're in a bit of a fairy tale or a story that doesn't seem to be real. So my question to everyone here is, who in the crowd believes that we're living in a world of this sort of AGI robot unicorn where this one AI machine is going to take over and swallow us whole? Like, it's a genuine question. Like, there's one, two, there's a few. Okay, cool. So, is it, when I realize ChatGPT can do my job for me, or when I realize ChatGPT can do my job for me? And it's just like this, oh my God, my job, my life, my whole existential crisis. Or is it people telling me AI is going to destroy the world, like a few of you just put your hand up, and then it can't even tell the difference between a cat and a dog? The other one that's really interesting is the Chihuahua and the blueberry muffin. And to me, it's like these AI, these robots are like 3-year-old children. They're like completely senseless, without direction. They're not super intelligent, and I'll put an asterisk on it. I should have put an asterisk. In the case of like the relevance talk earlier, if you put some structure around it and you help it and you sort of guide it in the right way, you sort of drip feed the tasks, like I was doing with Otto for his bedtime routine, you have a tearless evening where they go to sleep and hopefully don't wake up in the night. So that's a little bit of context of where I'm coming from when we talk about the space of AI. Alex has done a great intro about me, so I won't talk too much about myself, but I've been in the data space for a while. I kind of self-proclaim myself as an emerging tech futurist, whatever the hell that means, and a data-driven dad. So another question for the crowd, and please be honest, when is the last time you interacted with an actual chatbot? And let's just say time frame is a week and not something that your own company has produced, so outside of your company. Show of hands.
Including ChatGPT?
Not including ChatGPT, like an actual like chatbot that's, okay, 4, 5, 6, okay. So for some odd reason, this whole entire industry is like fixated with this 1% use case. And I'm not saying it's bad. In the case of Domain, the interesting thing there was that the focus wasn't on the customer service or that. It was about actually understanding the customer better to then provide a whole suite of other services. So a lot of these use cases are like, oh, we're going to do information retrieval and customers are going to love us and it's going to feel better. The experience is still the same. Fundamentally, it's just maybe faster or they get a better response, but the end result's the same. But there's this whole other 99% that we're just leaving on the table, but we're fixating on this single 1% use case. So I'm going to pause there for a second and sort of take us on a little bit of a journey to sort of explain the other 99%. So when we think about the typewriter, right? The typewriter changed the economy and society as a whole. We think about the typewriter, we think about the Industrial Revolution, we think about job creation, women were empowered to come to workplaces and this whole industry changed, economy started moving quickly. And a lot of people go, oh, what's going to happen with AI? Why is there so much change? I feel uncertainty. And the typewriter sort of tells us this story of the revolutions that we're going in. And again, this does feel quite similar to the domain talk, but I'm going to take a different spin on it. We started with mechanization, the whole world of steam engines, which was the first industrial revolution. But the second industrial revolution with Henry Ford and the productization of vehicles and mass production is when the actual world of product management actually came to life. You're trying to do things at scale, at speed, but still able to change and adapt. And at that point onwards, the world of sort of product management really started to evolve. And then we moved into the information era, digital, interconnected systems. But the thing is, we're in the middle of a fourth revolution right now. And if anyone other tells you otherwise, don't believe them, because change is happening so much. If you don't even know what tomorrow looks like and yesterday looks like that's pretty much the entire essence of a constantly changing world around us. And another key point I want to make in this, not that it's, a key sort of factor, is that each one of these were about 100 years apart. We're now going at an even more rapid pace. So the speed of change is also increasing as well as the change itself. So you're sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to bed, I'm having an existential crisis, what is my job going to be like? I don't want to have children, the economy is going to crash, I don't know what's going on. It's because of the speed of change. You don't know your left from your right, your up and your down, which technology I should be learning, should I become a data scientist, should I learn to code? Some people said English is the next programming language, oh my God, what do I do? Yeah, that's basically the reason why, because we're in the middle of the change as we speak. So if I was to sort of boil down the actual change of where we are now and where we're going, we were in what we call a knowledge economy, right? So this was a time and a space where, let's just say enterprises held on to power or held on to their moat, as they like to call it, or their value by retaining data and creating knowledge. And knowledge was the oil, data is the new oil, that whole paradigm. But what's happened with the advent of large language models and the accessibility of data? Well, I now have a PhD scientist, a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant in my pocket, right? And in some cases, open source, so it's completely closed, it's mine, you can't take that away from me. So we move away from this knowledge economy. Like no one actually retains that knowledge. There are some cases where that's happening, but that knowledge is now available in the hands of everyone. We've leveled that playing field. So you can't play in this space where knowledge is the key thing. Yes, you might have some specific data about a certain industry, you might play in that space really well, but that's not the only thing that's there. So as we move to what we call an allocation economy, is we're all becoming managers. So in the case of the relevance one, where you have all these AI agents running around doing stuff for you, we're all managers. We're prompting these machines to go and carry out tasks for us. So I'm a manager, you're a manager. Essentially, my 4-year-old who's using a voice assistant bot to find some music for him or pick the next show is becoming a manager of these AI agents. When we start to boil this down, we went from the past, which was like everyone's perfect in their individual craft. Your decision making is based on your intuition and your years of experience, and you're almost micromanaging everything, to what was a few years ago, you're a knowledge worker, you have your own expertise, but you work in a sort of collective. And a lot of your work is sort of human focused, but there is that hands-on intervention that occurs. And then you move to this, what we call the new revolution, which is what we're calling the information age. And that's where you're now managing and allocating both human and AI resources symbiotically. So you've got these agents working for you, you've got humans working for you, somewhat harmoniously, yet to be figured out how that works. But we're guiding the AI how to carry out the task, we're decision making together, and we're evaluating as managers what task I should give to a human, what task I should give to a machine. Like in some organizations, people are using ChatGPT to create content in some cases. So you're allocating that task already. People are doing this not knowing, not aware of it in their day-to-day lives. And the key bit at the bottom is we're blending the AI with the human creativity, because it's no longer about knowledge anymore, it's about creativity. So similar to an Einstein quote, and it's been paraphrased, we're only limited by our imagination, not our IQ, because that knowledge is now available to everyone. It's just how you end up using that knowledge is what's going to drive the value. So our roles have changed, the industry's changing, technology's changing, change. So when we roll that back a little bit, we take a step back and we go, okay, what's happening right now? We're essentially in this like hype versus reality, in this sort of peaks and troughs. There's many names of this chart that we're looking at. Hype cycles, one version of it. But essentially, we've gone from the eruption into the frenzy zone. we're in this zone where it's like everything's going crazy and we still haven't quite plateaued and figured out what the patterns are. But that said, there are some sort of key things that I want to talk about in a minute, but that's driving a lot of this sort of like panic state in the economy. So if I was to drill down into this frenzy, this climb, and we drill down in that and we say, look, let's look at different dimensions, let's break that up, what's driving that? What we've actually got is product is the next enabler. So we've got AI researchers. So this stuff, the stuff that you're seeing with OpenAI, maybe four or 5 years ago, this stuff was kicking off. Most people were unbeknownst. The fact that everyone's in this room now is because that's already happened, it's gone, it's available. Then we moved over to like the engineering space. We've got tools. ML engineers, data scientists can build language models, they can do that kind of stuff. But the next thing that's actually missing is the tools are there, the systems are there, but what's the product? Like what are we doing with this technology? Because once we know what we're doing with this technology, that buy-in then goes into the enterprise space. So then we go, okay, what's the value exchange? What's the ROI that we're going to drive? So actually the key here is the fact that product people are like the glue, the next point in that sort of wave and that hype cycle that's going to happen, because they're going to be the ones that are going to take all this technology, like the relevance AI one that was shown earlier, and actually put them into some production use cases. And the interesting thing when you think about an enterprise use case is for an enterprise to have buy-in, to have it on the roadmap, to drive that budget and the conversation, there needs to be a feature, there needs to be a roadmap, there needs to be a discussion around that, and that's going to come from product. So what we want is a somewhat mental model for your generative AI features. And please don't laugh at me, but this is true, right? Like sexy. It's like chatbots, we got some nice UI, it's popping up, it's great. And then you got boring, and then you got low value, high value. So the main one is obviously sexy, high value, great, like that happens. But this boring but high value is actually the space that we're going to play in that's going to add value, because the cool stuff most of the times just looks cool. Like, I'm not saying it in a bad way, like a lot of the AI tools and ML and stuff just get sensationalized. Like all these marketing, all this stuff that you're reading on LinkedIn and Twitter, there's a lot of hype, a lot of sensationalization. And it's that noise that's causing this sort of concern. Everyone's like, I'm missing out, like a bit of FOMO. But actually it's this like boring stuff that's going to drive a lot of high value. Your question's going to be like, what's the boring stuff? I'm going to get to that in a minute. So scaling generative AI features, you want to scale them to services. So I'm going to talk through a couple of use cases. This is the tail end of my talk, by the way. So the first one is pretty obvious. Like most of you are probably in this initial stage, which is like, I have a feature that I'm doing now in my organization. It's a product search. It's I'm a retailer and it's like better recommendation, better personalization. Let's just put some AI in there. Let's sort of like supercharge that feature. That makes sense. That's sort of low key. You're not sort of changing something that's already there. You're just adding to something. The next one is like features that would not have been possible without AI. So these might be things like, we're now using generative services, so now we can generate content. We can generate output from our product that we couldn't before because we didn't have an army of humans to do this. And then the last one, which mostly startups are playing in and very little enterprises, is this like a whole new service that's born. So if you look at Canva, for example, like a really good example where they can actually now generate the whole product from end to end for their users, because now the AI allows them to do that. So you can now create these new services entirely. So like this is a good sort of mental model to like flex your brain to understand actually this one's easy, going right down to the bottom is hard, but actually the one at the end is going to create a whole new revenue stream for your organization, a whole new area that doesn't exist. And a lot of that stuff, the new services, are still to be defined. Like we don't know what the patterns for that look like. We don't know what the user's expectations are for those. And that's the whole hype cycle thing. So the one at the end we're not sure of, but existing features that you're currently using in your business, like you can probably make a list in your whole organization and actually start to tackle that pretty well. So when you bring this back, actually driving the generative use cases in this space, if you think about this paradigm, right, like you've got different types of product managers. You've got product managers, you've got marketing product managers, you've got like data product managers. But if we start to think about like, what does that look like? So if we think about using AI to improve existing features, well, better search, better form pre-fills, Imagine the forms all pre-filled nicely, descriptions, you're starting the user off, is this correct? Talk to an AI. It could be from a growth product PM perspective down here. It could be, personalized homepage and content, parts of the experience change. Not too much, but just enough that it feels really personal to a user. Some of the recommendations, like a lot of AI is based on recommendations, but we could potentially create better recommendations with the help of generative AI. But then if we start to flick this is like, creating new features. And the interesting one for growth that I've seen is like you're generating a part of the product. So for example, if you're selling an enterprise solution, the user can generate that solution with a prompt. So if you want to onboard a customer, they just write about what their business is or what they do, and then it's all fully configured for them, as an example. You can have whole entire UIs generated for your customer as they need a product. Like, let's just say it doesn't exist, and it's like the product's literally building itself as it goes. And then the last one is things like, you're starting to use like AI agents. You've created whole new products that didn't exist before, and a lot of that's to do with modalities. So before you can do things like audio or video, 3D, virtual worlds, but you can now generate these, you can play in this space. So this is like a critical way of sort of thinking about this. And another way to think about this space, especially in the green one, is a lot of this tends to be to do with workflow. So in your organization, customers might be filling out a refund form for something. There might be an onboarding process. It's very process orientated, very flat, very linear some cases, but it's right for generative AI. Because it's like that monotonous process that's boring, but it's so high value because if you take that away from your organization, your product just doesn't work anymore. Your organization can't function. So that's sort of like this paradigm where if you add value in there and you speed that up by whatever, that's where you start to see this 20x, 30x, 40x use cases. So Klarna did one recently. Yes, it's a chatbot example, but what they did is based on what the user was asking for, it understood the intent and it just solved it for them using agents. So when it understood you're trying to do a refund, it just refunded the last transaction automatically. So I think like 2/3 of their customer service was like automated overnight, and it went from like 15 minutes down to like a minute for a customer to have a resolution. Like, yes, I'm not using a chatbot to get an answer, maybe, but it's the whole agent workflow. It's that whole process of like, what is the end user experience meant to be like? What does an ideal user experience look like? So some parting thoughts, where are you on the journey along that spectrum that I just mentioned? Where's your organization? Because every organization, every product has its own sort of appetite when it comes to change. And I like to go away with this, like, just imagine the AI as a 3-year-old. If you don't have a process, you don't have a framework, you don't have a way of thinking about it, you don't have a mental model, you're not going to be able to get this machine to perform any better than a 3-year-old for your given organization. You're just going to be running around like a headless chicken at bedtime trying to figure out what to do. Thank you. Quick plug, if you want the slides and the talk, I've recorded as well, so if you fill out that form, I'll send it to you at the end.
Let's go into questions. Let me, can I plug this in?
Sure. Just give people a second, I think they're scanning.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we've just got a couple of questions, and then maybe,
Beer time.
yeah, maybe it is beer time. So, in your opinion, what does a company need to have in place at a bare minimum in terms of AI so it won't be left behind?
This one's always a crowd-pleasing question. It's actually not the technology. The problem is not technology. Like, the technology's there. It's technology, people, process, right? You people are here, but where's the rest of your organization? How many of you in the room are actually comfortable using ChatGPT? How many of you in the room understand the features and what's possible and what's not possible, right? And then once you've got the process, once you've got the people and the technology, what's the process? Are you happy to carve out, you've got 30 people in your product team, are you happy to carve out 3 or 4 people to then just start experimenting on this stuff? To build out use cases, put it on your roadmap? No, maybe, that's the question. So like a lot of times this sounds great, but like actually, once you pick up the shovel, are you happy to start digging and getting to work?
Makes sense. And another one is, are computing costs a concern for the growth of AI?
Short answer is no. In the last year and a half, the actual cost of compute for like even OpenAI's models has gone down by 35 times, like multiple, just to give you an example. And what's actually happening is the processing power, like a lot of these machines were built for computer use and graphics cards. They weren't built for AI, right? Essentially. We're seeing new types of chips being developed, and a lot of that's essentially doing is bringing the models to the edge. So partially some of this work will start to run on your laptop, on your phone, on the device. So it's actually going to make the cost even cheaper. It's going to make it more accessible. So yeah, if you're building something for the first time, cost shouldn't be a factor. It should be about understanding and driving value first, then optimize the cost.
We'll do the last one. 3-year-old grow up. Do you think AI will stay a 3-year-old?
I got a good story for this one. So I don't know if he just turned 3, he's 4 now, but we were on the train and near Central Station, and an announcement was made on the train, and the first thing my son did was like, "Hey Google, shut up." Like, I live in like a text-based world. Some people do touch first. Like, my kids are like in an agent-first world. Like they literally expect things to like read their minds and act for them. And like, that's the experiences that your consumers are going to start to expect from your organization and the products and the services. Like, if you're not thinking with that mindset that AI is passive, like this whole chat thing, like I get a bit draconian about this, but assume the chat example is gone. Like, just assume that's dead. Like, machines just know what you're looking for. We have the data, we know our customers, and it just acts for us. Like this whole agent-like world where, you know, if you knew enough about me, why can't you respond to my emails? Why can't you book my meetings?
Thanks, Vince. That's all. Actually, one more. Model recommendations for prioritizing customer privacy.
So this depends on what type of organization you are. I get this question a lot in my lectures as well. So for example, if you're in Australia and you work for a bank or something like that, the APRA might say, hey, data can't leave Australia. And then APRA might go, hey, you can use Azure, we've deemed it safe, and the data is going to stay on shore, and there's certain safeguards. So it really depends on the level of scrutiny and risk and the type of customers. The second thing it also depends on is the use cases that you're dealing with, right? If you're going and giving medical advice and diagnosing people with this stuff versus sending a draft email to someone, like the level of risk and the privacy is probably different. So when you talk to lawyers and you talk about privacy, they're actually talking about risk and what does that risk lever look like. And there's obviously regulatory compliance as well. There's obviously open source. You can go and download a model, you can run it in your own walled garden, but then you got to do all the compute and all the maintenance and everything else. So there's some trade-offs, like there's no exact answer. If whoever's wrote that question wants to come talk to me afterwards, happy to have a chat.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.